Hi everyone, welcome to Figuring Out Fabric, where I ask dumb questions and you get smart answers. And I have how do we pronounce it? Emilie Rønning? Is that the right way to do it?
That's
Um
correct way would be Emilie Rønning.
if- I'm gonna have to work on that one. No, I appreciate it. Um and so you are one of the three heads of Fabric February, where you thought, you know what? The best time to learn about fabric is the coldest month in the north, and I believe your legal title is Data Queen from the North. So what does that carry any benefits? Or is it just an honorific, like how you can buy like a plot of land in Scotland to become like a lord or lady kind of thing?
Unfortunately not, I would have to say, but I did not come up with the title myself, so I do love that I actually got the title because Queen of Data is yeah.
Yeah, it's like a nickname. If you assign it to yourself, then it's kind of awkward, right? So it
Yeah,
has to
I
be
know.
has to be something someone else gives. Um, so today we're going to be talking about notebooks, and I I think a good starting point is talking about what they're for. And I say that because a decade ago, I thought I understood what notebooks were for. And now they're everywhere in Fabric. Because a decade ago, um, everyone was trying to become a data scientist. I thought I wanted to become a data scientist. I realized that I don't, I don't like statistics in terms of having to like validate my work. I like code that compiles. I like being able to look at the data and see it. And so having to memorize like the area under the curve or rock or any of that stuff, I'm like, no, I'm good. And so at the time, my kind of understanding of the purpose of notebooks was they were kind of this REPL loop. I guess for people who don't know what a REPL loop, it's like read, evaluate, print, loop, whatever. And the idea is that you basically it's a way to be a little bit more interactive, a little bit more exploratory with your scripting code. And so I thought, okay, this is basically just for data science nerds who want to be able to run R, want to be able to run Python, and it's a way of kind of documenting their findings or document the code. And now we've like a decade later, we've got Fabric, and the moment you want to do, in my opinion, it seems like any kind of governance or administration, there's a good chance you're going to have to cobble together some sort of notebook to do it. And it's, I think for anyone coming to it, it's a strange paradigm because I remember years ago learning about, I forget the term, it was like from Donald Knuth, like literate coding. But the whole idea originally of like, let's swap, let's make the comments the most important thing and make the code less important and make your basically have executable documentation. So that's kind of my patchwork previous understanding. So what are notebooks for? When should we like consider using them?
Well, like you said, there are a lot of different use cases for notebooks. But my favorite use case for notebooks are basic data engineering.
Mhm.
It's as simple as that. It's what I've been using it mainly for the past 5 years. Not only in Fabric because Fabric hasn't been around for that long, but I did also use the notebooks with Azure Databricks. So
Mhm.
basically the same, if you can say it like that. And so it's uh, from my perspective, coming and with a bit of a personal story behind it, is that one of the clients that I worked for when I started as a data engineer, they used an older, maybe legacy technology called Azure Data Lake Analytics,
Okay.
um, which is a Microsoft solution. They built their own programming language that which they called NewSQL, which is kind of similar to T-SQL, but not
Oh
at
yeah,
all.
I remember that being like a thing like for a couple years and then it just died out. It was very strange.
But my clients still use that, and the
Okay.
first thing that I found was that you could write this enormously long code, and you wouldn't, and if you got an error, you would have no idea where the error actually were in the code.
Okay, sure.
Which was one of the things that made me really fall in love with notebooks, because in notebooks you can section your code in categories or in sections that make sense, and you can run that section and see that it actually run green before you move on to the next one, which is perfect because then it's easier to debug when you're doing your work, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And when you're doing basic or more complex data engineering in terms of transforming data for your ETL pipe, then you would also build views. So going from one view to the next view and seeing that your logic and your code run as how you wanted it to is essential to make sure um, that it's bug free before you put it into production, which is key to say the least.
So that makes a lot of sense. Just the fact that if you're coming from more of a scripting kind of situation, it's not ideal. Like I've had to deal with T-SQL stored procedures that are very, very long and all that kind of stuff. Um, I think I guess part of something I'm wondering is how much how much of the benefit in terms of ETL, how much of the benefit of notebooks is the platform and the structure you just described, and how much is the tooling, like the libraries and that kind of stuff? Because one of my challenges of trying to learn like data frames like PySpark or Pandas or that kind of stuff is whenever I try to watch a course on it, all of the first like one or two chapters, whatever you want to call it, sections, it's all stuff that I've memorized with SQL. So whenever it's like, here's how you filter a data frame, here's how you do a projection. It's like this is just another way of doing it. So you know, is the how much of the value in your opinion is the structure, the fact that we have notebooks and now we have T-SQL notebooks and Python notebooks, and how much is no, being able to use the specific libraries and languages is really important.
So for my case, I have one client now that uses notebooks with Python, and it has taught me a lot in terms of learning Python. I'm not a Python girl at all.
Right.
I'm a SQL girl. So for me, it's the highest benefits, of course, is the structure of the notebook, where you can actually make it also easier for the other developers to understand what you're trying to do with the code, but it's also the fact that you're able to write Spark SQL. So even if you're coming from a world of T-SQL, the transition to Spark SQL isn't that hard because they have a lot of um, the same syntax. The only thing that is missing in Fabric, which has given me a great deal of a headache, is the truncate for a function. You can't
Okay.
really truncate a table in a lakehouse. That's the one annoying thing. But you can come around with that with using merge statements. So I had to expand my merge statement to also to accommodate for the lack of the truncate.
Yeah, having to learn two different variants of SQL is always challenging as well, just because like T-SQL does a lot of things differently than the average SQL language.
True.
It can be a little bit challenging. Um, yeah, so that's interesting. So, um, at what so if someone's new to Fabric, correct me if I'm wrong, but the three main ETL solutions they're going to be immediately presented with is basically Power Query, so Gen 2 data flows, and then kind of Azure Data Factory with pipelines,
Yeah.
and then notebooks. And we had Christina Ferris on for the first episode, and she talked about like it makes sense to follow that kind of progression as you're
Mm.
getting more comfortable with it and working your way up in terms of complexity. Um, at when in your mind do you think someone should start to dive into notebooks? Whenever I was messing around with them, I wish that I had at least gotten some background kind of exposure.
Mm.
Um, Especially because so I primarily focus on Power BI. And one of the most frustrating things is in DAX, if you hit the enter button while you're writing a formula, you get sent to jail. Just gone. Because it's like, all right, you're done. And it's like, oh, I'm supposed to hit shift enter or alt enter or whatever to do a new line. So you get this muscle memory. And it's the exact opposite with notebooks. So I was constantly trying to write code and make a new line, and I would run the cell. And thankfully, it was just a simple like like, okay, read into a data frame or something, because I was just doing a demo. Um, but I could not like, how do I make a new line? And I'm Googling and I find out, oh, I just hit the enter button.
Yeah.
Um, but I think just trying to uh I think some basic exposure is helpful just so you like can get comfortable and you're not disoriented, because trying to learn them under pressure
Mm.
is frustrating. Because again, the context was I was doing a benchmark for Fabric for loading data into it from CSVs. And so I was learning all these different ways to do it. And whenever like you're disoriented and trying to learn notebooks, it's rough. So like in your mind, when does it make sense to start, maybe dipping your toes and then maybe like seriously focusing on learning notebooks?
Well, I'm a consultant, so I'm gonna come with the best answer ever. It depends.
It depends. Okay.
No,
That's
but
totally fair.
I would say that if you are a person that knows that you want to try to learn either SQL or Scala or Python, um, I would suggest to just jump in at both beats. If you are a person coming from the Power BI world, or a person that knows that I'm not going to do complex ETL, just go ahead and do the data flows right away, because the amount of time that you will spend trying to learn a programming language, because the notebook tool itself is not that really hard to learn. It's
Right.
more the how you write your code that is the essential part. So, and if you know that you're not going to be that person in any case, you just want your cleaned data available for more reporting or analysis in Power BI, and go for the data flow part.
Yeah.
Um,
Good.
what I have found is that when I'm stuck and I want to try to fix my Python code and I know how to do it in my head, I know what I would do, or I know how I would write it in SQL, you have two options. Obviously, the ChatGPT or whatever bot that you can use to get some help. But sometimes you don't really want to put that code in a different square than within your client's workspace or whatever. So then I've started to use the data wrangler functionality in notebooks, where you are essentially allowed to see the profiling of your data. You can translate clicky clicky droppy droppy to
Yeah.
Python code, which then again can make you understand the Python code even more, because you did it in your head already. You just didn't know how to write the syntax, right? So yeah, I would suggest that you go with data flows if you know that you're not going to be the techie person. If you want to learn how to code, then jump in with both feet right away, because that's, at least for me, that's the easiest way to learn. And of course, or I find it's super hard to try to learn a new tool if I don't have an actual practical um, question or solution that I
Right.
actually have to build. So I would suggest that also, that if you don't have that practical question that you want to solve or the solution that you want to build, then try to make that for yourself so that you have a goal of where you want to end up, not just testing notebooks, because that's not going to get you really far.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a lot easier to do a proof of concept with pipelines or data flows and just get a quick lay of the land. But notebooks, because you are writing code, you kind of do need something that forces you to figure out how to fit the pieces together.
Yeah.
Um, no, I think that makes sense. And I mean, it sounds like if people do decide to dive in, there hasn't been a lot of times where you wish you had gone with a different tool, because notebooks are very capable, right?
Yeah.
They're kind of at that top of the three that we talked about. Um,
Yeah.
so I
I've
mean,
had some instances where my clients would like to, or would prefer to use data flows, and of course we've set that up because that's what they want and that's what they're going to maintain when we are done with the project. But then I struggle again, because that's not my main area of expertise. So then I have to go back to, okay, how would I do this in SQL, and then try to turn it over to something that's just, yeah, the click of the button basically. And so it goes both ways. It's not just data flows are always the easiest one and notebooks are always the easiest ones. It depends on what you have. as an expertise. Yeah.
That's definitely, I think, a bigger challenge for consultants because we have to work with a bunch of different tools. We have to work with what the customer wants. And there's plenty of times where, yes, there's something that would be easier for me, but my biggest concern is maintainability. And so a lot of times I'm either, like you said, going to use a low code solution, or I see people making Power BI reports and using custom visuals or Deneb and doing all this beautiful, beautiful stuff. But I go with native visuals because I know those will be supported.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to hear about it 6 months later or something like that. Um, but yeah, I think for uh, anyone who's trying to either be a consultant or a content creator or whatever, Fabric is really, really rough because there's a lot of tools, a lot of languages, and I feel bad anyone coming from Power BI because you were already expected to know like 3 different languages. And now it's like, well, what about, have you ever thought about Scala? It's like, no, I haven't. It's cool that someone was able to run something else on the JVM, but it's not for me. Um, so what have you learned? Oh, good.
Yeah, sorry. No, and also the things or the tools they change only all that sometimes also on a daily basis. So it's kind of hard to also keep up with all the different new stuff that comes in, even in data flows and notebooks. So
Yeah.
it's difficult to have an expertise across all tools. Also.
So what have you learned about notebooks since you started using Fabric?
Well, I think the hardest lesson learned for me was a truncate situation
Yeah.
where you're not allowed to truncate tables in a lake house. That was a really, really hard one for me, and I really had to think a lot to make that merge statement work exactly the way that I wanted it to. Um, Also, it wasn't a new thing per se in using notebooks. I had used a lot of parameters in Azure Databricks notebooks before, but getting them to function exactly the same way in the beginning with notebooks was a bit hard because it wasn't functioning the way that it should have been functioning, but they're great now. And you can also send them in through data pipelines, which is also amazing because that was a real struggle in the beginning. I could
Oh, yeah.
write a beautiful parameter, but I couldn't really use it because it would have been a static parameter, which is it's not
Kind of defeats the
usable.
purpose, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah.
So, we mentioned that you're one of the 3 heads of, Fabric February. What inspired you all to start a conference and all of that?
I mean, it was a bit of um I guess a fast decision when we first decided on it. So Martha and Catherine at that point were both MVPs.
Yeah.
So of course they knew about Fabric. They couldn't tell me anything. So,
They're
uh,
like, "You should do a conference. It's gonna be Poseidon themed. That's all we can tell you. There's a trident."
Yeah, no, they didn't even mention it until like the August after
Yeah.
after it was launched in May. But but they obviously knew that this is what was a new cool, the new cool kid in town that everybody was going to be excited about. So when it launched in May, we figured we had a night with some wine and we started to like um brainstorm, should we do a conference, what should it be about, and then I think it just yeah that was the birth of Fabric February, which is really really cool because I never saw myself as a person that would that would organize an event in that scale at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, and Fabric obviously goes well with February. So we just had to make people come to cold, cold Norway
Yeah,
in
right.
February.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, it seems to be it from what I've seen on the outside, it seems to be doing well, so that's definitely very exciting.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. So I guess, what do you have any advice for anyone? Well, you've already said kind of go and just dive in, but do you have any advice for anyone starting with notebooks or learning about them or anything like that?
I would suggest that you start with just understanding the language that you want to write your code in
Yep.
first. Because you don't really need to learn that in a notebook. You could do that outside of a notebook. Obviously, you can use the notebook to write the code and start with that, but focus on getting your code expertise up and running before you dive into all the aspects of a notebook in Fabric, because that's gonna help you a lot. Because yeah, the notebook is great, but it's giving to you with no effort at all. It's a click of a button and then it's there. The real value is the code that you put into it. So if you don't really put that effort into learning your code, then it's not really there's no use in using notebooks at all.
Yeah, well, and the cool thing is like we have more entry points than ever before because for a while it was
Mm.
just Spark, but now we have Python only ones, which aren't as expensive to run. We've got T-SQL ones, and so it seems like there's more entry points. And one of the things that's exciting about T-SQL is there's plenty of cases that if you were some kind of database administrator, having kind of these run books is helpful. Another thing I'd mention, I know your focus is the ETL, but the admin side is interesting too. Have you done anything with semantic link for Power BI and all that stuff?
I haven't, but I haven't personally, but so one of the clients that I'm working for, they have this huge capacity that multiple workspaces are sharing. And so I'm not an admin of the Fabric tenant. I'm only admin of the workspaces that I maintain. So um I did help the Fabric guys, let's call them that, to set up a semantic link towards the metrics report so that they could fetch the data from the metrics report and put that in a lakehouse so that I could use that and filter only on my workspaces so that I could actually monitor only my workspaces that were relevant for me and not the whole capacity load. So now I'm able to see how my notebooks are peaking or if they're running as expected and how much of the capacity they are eating up basically, which is good for me because then I know if I have a huge peak, why is that? Is it in the production environment? Did I change my code? Is my code inefficient? Et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah.
but that all the instances where I've looked at the semantic link part.
Yeah, I know a couple people, I'm forgetting the person's full name, but they go by Lucid Will, has made a open source project for being able to pull stuff from the capacity metrics app and put it into a
Mm.
lake house. I know some other people have done that kind of stuff. So I think that's kind of exciting, especially since right now that capacity metrics app is fairly limited. So you're looking at the last 14 days, and it's not the easiest to narrow down the exact cause of a cost. When I was doing my benchmarking, I basically it was the saddest thing. Every time I wanted to do a run of some sort of test, I made a new lakehouse to like load the data into. And so I'd have like AZ copy underscore one, AZ copy underscore two, because I did it 3 times for each type of method to account
Yeah.
for any kind of noise or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, we had an episode with Stephanie Bruno about Semantic Link and Semantic Link Labs. And I think anyone who administers Power BI at all should check it out because the ability to query from the models is really cool. The fact that you can run Michael Kowalski's best practice analyzer against the data, just see, okay, have you modeled your reports well? Now, the one downside is I think Kurt Bueller did a video about how some of those rules are kind of dogmatic. And so you don't want to take everything as like perfect truth, but the fact that you can start to have sort of this quality check in terms of your model design is pretty exciting. So that's a really neat kind of thing that you can do with that.
Yeah. Cool.
Cool.
One thing that I want to mention about notebooks, which is it's a big warning sign, and I think new people coming into that want to start to learn Fabric and notebooks should really be aware of this. That is that if you create a notebook connected to a lakehouse in your tenant, and you have select statements or print statements that print the data from your lakehouse. And then you want to share that notebook because the notebook template itself is really good, and it has a really nice use case for a different client or a different colleague or whomever. If you export that notebook and then you import it into another Fabric tenant, you will see that printed data,
Yeah.
which can be of serious sensitivity issue. So just be aware of that. And I know that back in February, I attended SQL conference with the Mark, an MVP. And I sat down and I had a session about notebooks, and I was going to import one of the demo notebooks that I had with a print statement. And I did that in a new tenant. And I said, "Hey, Mark, look at this. Isn't this weird? Like, have you seen this before?" And he he had a look and he was like, "Wow, that's really that's really bad," because then my tenants weren't connected at all, and I could still see my notebook with the prints of the data. And yeah, so just be aware of that. And um, please go and check out Mark's. I think Mark, or I know that Mark wrote a blog about it at Data Mark. So check that out if you want to read more about the details of um, how you can make sure that you don't lose sensitive data in other tenants where they shouldn't be. Yep.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes. The blog title is "The Hidden Risk in Fabric Notebook Exports." Um, and yeah, I think that's definitely something important to talk about. Even when I was doing my benchmarking, this was probably excessive, but I went in and cleared out any of the GUIDs in my notebook that I would like put on the GitHub because it's hard to tell what the risk is there. But yeah, it makes sense in retrospect that if the notebook saves the print screen that you do on all the steps, that exists somewhere and that can have sensitive data. So no, it makes sense. We'll make sure we put that in the show notes. Cool. So let's go ahead and wrap up. What is your favorite and least favorite Fabric features?
Ooh, well, of course, my favorite Fabric
It
feature.
might be notebooks.
Yes.
Checks out. Makes sense.
Obviously. Not even ashamed to say it.
Yeah.
But my least favorite feature of Fabric is very hard to, because I don't really have that like least favorite, but I have
It could be a pain point or something like that right now. Something needs a little bit of polish.
well well, notebooks also need polish, and I
Okay.
think that the biggest polish that it needs is dark mode.
Interesting. I would not have expected that to be the answer.
Yeah, I do want my dark mode, and I do want my Dracula theme. I love the clean text, so yeah.
Very interesting.
If I could give one wish to Microsoft, then that would be that would be it.
Cool. And so then where can people find you? And I'd ask you if you have anything to promote, but I have a guess what that might be.
Yes. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Emilie Rønning is the name. Or you can also connect with me on Blue Sky. I'm there as well under Emilie Rønning. That's pretty much where I'm at in terms of social media. But yeah, and last but not least, I hope I see you all, both listeners and you, Eugene, at Fabric February in Oslo in 2026.
Well, we've got like 8 months to prepare, so or maybe less than that, closer to 6. But very cool. Well, thank you so much, Emily. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.